I think we should get going.
Okay, well,
If it's okay with you, I mean, you're the boss.
only for a minute. It's 4 o'clock, we'll open the county budget committee meeting and call to order. So we will first do some introductions for people that don't know each other. I'm Sandra Wenzel, Mayor.
Sharon Faulkner, Town Council person.
Jennifer.
Come on in.
Hey,
Well, 1 minute, 2 minutes.
Sit down quickly, you'll be here in time to introduce yourself.
Hurry up, you're next to introduce yourself.
John Bunch.
Okay, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Jennifer Ito from the community I work at the hospital.
Mike Warren,
Ray Simmons, town manager.
Craig Turner, Town Council.
John Bunch, citizen.
John Harms, Budget Committee.
Charlie Tracy, Budget Committee citizen.
Okay, thank you very much. So the first order of business is for the budget committee to elect a chairperson. Put chairman on there.
Chairperson, I'm sorry.
So that is up to the budget committee to do that. Have nominations? Who did it last year?
I think
It was
Charlie
me
did.
last year,
I think
so
Charlie
I
did.
think it's time to,
This guy
someone else.
here.
John was
Oh,
the
okay.
vice chair or something, I think, so.
Yeah.
Glad to be chairman.
and you
Step
can-
up now, huh?
Yeah, we should work and move up.
Need to kind of move up.
Yeah. I would nominate John Harms to be the chairperson.
Second.
Second? Okay, all in favor? Up.
Aye.
Aye. John Harms is chair, and the next item is vice chair.
I would nominate Jen Antle to be the vice chair.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So at this point, the chairperson will take over running the meeting.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the budget message. So I guess I turn it over to Ray.
Okay. Here they come. Take one and pass one down. I think I've got
I need,
enough coming, there's another one coming down here soon.
okay.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Okay. I present to you a draft budget for the Town of Lakeview for the July 1, 2016 through June 30th, 2017 fiscal year. The budget is balanced except for one exception that I'll point out as we get into it. Some highlights of the budget include there is a larger beginning fund balance in general fund this year. This allows for some money to be remaining in contingency that can be used by the town if unanticipated opportunities or needs come up as we go through the year. The 911 fund is not balanced, but it actually is, but it's based upon money that is earned during the 2016-17 fiscal year that will not be actually received until the first part of 2017-18. The 911 telephone distribution, tax distribution that comes from the state runs up to 2 quarters behind the time that it's actually earned. Behind the period that it was collected for. Therefore, 911 funding this next year must be addressed before another year rolls around. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the 911 budget, but you know, as I've been saying, I think for 3 or 4 years, and we are now at that point of where we're about to run out of funds available. We'll call it that because part of it's in money that we will receive after the 1st of July of next year. But we're running out of money, and so we're gonna have to fix this again somehow or other. Parks continue to need significant funding, and we get that from the program support fund. We've been transferring money there every year for a number of years now. The increasing minimum wage law may have additional impact on the park fund in future years. Remember, this is our lifeguards, and they're usually at the low end of the pay scale, and it isn't going to affect us this year. That law isn't going to affect until December, or rather January 1st, but it may be a factor going forward. Street funds are, as I put it, just getting by. A reminder is that the bond from 1999 will be paid off in 2019. This is the one that redid most all of the streets in the town of Lakeview at that time. The town council, budget committee, possibly a special task force put together by the town council might want to begin to start thinking about how we're going to maintain the 20+ miles of town streets in the future. Although over time there are lots of utility cuts in our streets, they are generally in pretty good condition. However, because they were mostly all improved about 15 or 16 years ago, they are all going to need major work, mostly all at about the same time. So when the bond expires, I guess it might be something to be thinking about is how do we go about taking care of our streets in the future. So, utility funds continue to be adequate. We continue to take on a significant project almost every year. Last spring and summer were the water line replacements on South G, South H, 4th Street and Mountain View. This summer and fall will be reconstruction of the 3rd Street sewer lift station down by the baseball fields. And some water line work on South 9th Street as well as North 4th Street near Proville. Also, pending agreement and notice to proceed, a project to extend water and sewer mains to the Red Rock Biofuels on Cadmus Road is included in this year's budget. We'll talk a little more about that when we get to utility funds. Several potential expansions of the geothermal resources are in some phase of discussion, but the only one for certain at this time is the Head Start project, and it is in our budget for this year. There is some flexibility in next year's budget. Being able to project a larger beginning fund balance allows contingency and general fund to be a little larger next year after adjusting for payroll increases and a software upgrade for the police department and town hall. Contingency can only be spent with the approval of the town council. Areas that may need additional funds as we get into the next year's budget year are the technology upgrades. Those are, we don't have absolute numbers as to what those are going to cost. There is an upgraded accounting and utility program from our current supplier that is available and needed, as is the case for the police records programming. Finally, Jeff Marshall, our Public Works Director, is working on water quality improvement matters. We've talked about that a little bit at Town Council and all in the past. He's flushing our lines more often and for longer periods. He's also cleaning the storage tanks on the hills more often and making certain that the circulation in the tanks is working. The water master plan update that is included in this year's budget is a tool needed to gain access to various state funding opportunities for a water treatment facility if it was determined that that is necessary in the future to improve our water quality. Our last master plan was updated in 2001, and they're generally updated every 15 to 20 years. So because we're not quite at the end of that, we may not get a master plan update. This is funded by some state funds as well, the update. So we may not get an update this year, but we need to keep asking for it until we get one. So respectfully submitted, Ray Simmons, Budget Officer for the Town of Lakeview. So I guess we'll just, John, with your permission, go ahead and just jump in and just start through. I took the liberty of not putting together the notebooks that we've done in the past and did a little less flamboyant, I guess, this year. So you've got with you a budget document that's got a big staple up in the upper corner. So we'll start through this. In our revenue and general fund, unless you see something that you want me to talk about specifically, I'm going to kind of hit the highlights as we go along. And for the most part, our budget is essentially the same thing that it's been year after year after year after year. We don't do much different. We occasionally do something. Our projects and utilities are sometimes are always a little different, you know, different locations. We always have pay adjustments that we need to deal with. You know, those are just automatic. They happen because we have a labor contract for various parts of our employment, so we just have to make those adjustments. So there's not a lot of new things in here, but I'll hit a couple of items that I have questions about as we go through them. So the first one I want to point out is, as I mentioned in my budget message, is our beginning fund balance. Over the past few years, we've been able to save a little money and improve our financial position at the Town of Lakeview, so we have a little beginning fund balance that we can use. And because we've got these, primarily we've got these technology upgrades that we need to work on for our computer systems, some of the money of our beginning fund balance is budgeted to go there. The other thing is we've also got a larger contingency is where another part of our increased beginning fund balance will be used. Again, that's an estimate. I think it's a conservative estimate, pretty conservative estimate as to what the real beginning fund balance will be, but it's enough to make our budget work. So down under property taxes, we have you know, the number's about the same. Measure 5 keeps everything pretty much the same as it's always been now. Measure 50, excuse me, not Measure 5. Tax rates are frozen in place. The only thing that changes is valuations. We've had a little bit of a decrease in valuations because of the recession and the decreased value of properties. However, that's recovering, and I believe after this year that we'll probably be back to where we were. We did do an annexation, the council did just a couple of months ago, that's going to add some properties in the south end of Lakeview to us. The value of those, as far as the town's tax increase, is around $3,500. There will be some additional increases next year, just again trying to think down the road a little ways. Some things that are happening are you know, the annexation that we did this year includes the old McFarland North plant. I do know that they're investing somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million in improvements on that property. That'll be on our tax roll next year. $1 million amounts to about $6,500 of taxes, just for example. Dollar General has their plans for their new building at the corner of 140 and 395 are on their way to plan review. That's an investment of somewhere between $1 and $1.5 million there. It won't affect this year's taxes, but it will next year. So start thinking ahead about what you might do next year. Also, another annexation that is likely to take place later this summer is the old uranium tailings properties north of town. I now call it the Lucky Lass Industrial Site. I think it sounds better than uranium tailings. But anyway, it's going to be developed into a solar farm, and through some special state legislation, that property is going to provide a PILT payment, a payment in lieu of taxes to the town and the county and the hospital district and fire districts and various other districts. Our part of that's going to be in the neighborhood of $22,000. So that'll be new money coming to general fund in the 2017-18 budget year. So there's some things on the horizon. We're just not quite there yet. And then I won't even talk about Red Rock because they keep pushing off the date that they're going to actually break ground and start construction. And at best, that project, if they started tomorrow, wouldn't be on your tax rolls until the 2019-20 year. And actually, it won't be on your tax rolls. There's a payment in lieu of taxes for that as well. But someday, when it does get to the point that the town council and budget committee gets to thinking about that, if that's a reality, it'll the first year of that is supposed to bring us about $212,000. So then you'll have some significant money to do something with. Now, anyway, so moving on. Licenses and permits. These are all of our various franchise fees for the various, charter Pacific Power, CenturyTel, all of our utilities that use our city rights of ways. This is how we get paid for use of our rights of way in the town of Lakeview, for the most part, except for the planning permit fees, which are, of course, when people come in and apply for various land use activities in the town. The next section at the bottom of the page are various state shared revenues, cigarette tax, liquor tax, Oregon revenue sharing specifically. You might have noticed in the paper, if you've read our budget announcement that was in the paper, we specifically need to mention that the town does receive Oregon revenue sharing and that we use that in our general fund, generally in support of all of our general fund services. So it's estimated to be about $20,000 this next year.
Is there a gas tax?
We do, but it's in a different fund. It's in our street fund, Mike. On page 2, this year we receive a LCDC, that's land planning grant, every other year. We received it this year, so obviously, this meaning the year we're in, we won't receive it for the budget year we're budgeting for. We should be eligible for it again the following year. DEQ, as you guys, council will remember, we signed an agreement with them some time back that their support's going to be $15,000 instead of $17,000 this year for the air quality program. However, they are looking for additional funds and hoping that maybe they'll be able to come back to all of the entities that they help with the air quality program and add some money to that. We're not banking on it. We get a little money from district courts. It varies up and down. You know, we've almost got $3,000 already this year. You know, it's going to be $3,000 or $4,000 budget on the conservative side. Other revenues, this kind of picks up various things that aren't covered anywhere else. We get a refund usually from workers' comp. It's towards the bottom of the page, $5,000. County land sales, tax foreclosed properties that the county sells, that's their job, but we get a piece of that when they sell properties. It's to offset the loss of property taxes from years gone by. And then finally, the rural fire. And I want to point out here that we get money from the Lakeview Rural Fire Protection District. We get 70% of their tax base, and I want to point out that there's only $2,300 that's here, but I did discover as I was putting the budget together that we miscoded an income, and it's actually in our 911 fund. It is being transferred to this. We will actually come close to hitting $50,000 from the fire district this year. So that error we found that and we'll move that. So the 48,000 is easily going to be reached. Of course, we keep annexing their properties. I guess, now they build houses. They've got a lot of houses out in Lakeview Rural, and that's added quite a bit to their tax base too. So, actually, when we take property out of their responsibility and into ours, you know, theoretically, it lowers their obligation. You know, their liability for protecting properties then goes down because now we're taking it on. So, although they just look at the tax dollars, they forget to look at, well, they've got a little bit less responsibility because of the annexations. Okay, other revenues on page 3. We get a little reimbursement for the use, the ambulance service use of the copier at the police department. And other revenues is anything else that comes in that we didn't think about or specifically budget for. Next year, one of these items is likely going to be, we have at least 3 vehicles that are surplus property at this time that we really ought to get rid of. 2 of them are at the police department, 1 of them is the fire department, the old Bronco. And there's the Dare car, and then there's a Crown Vic. So that's just an example of, you know, if we get them sold, we don't know how much it'll be, but when those kind of revenues come in, this is where they end up.
Any of them make it to the Lions auction?
Well, you know, we haven't done that, and as a public entity, I'm not sure that whether
do
it's
that.
appropriate to donate public property there or not.
Just kidding.
But I have thought about it, John.
Have you?
Yeah, I have
We
thought about
do,
it.
we do.
Yeah, you guys give equipment, old TVs, I know, and.
Vehicles, because we.
Oh, that's right,
vehicles,
last
yeah.
year,
Mhm.
yeah.
Who's she? I
So
never
it-
talked to her.
It's a possibility. I haven't pursued, have we got a vehicle to sell this year yet, John? You can't hear me. John,
Oh, no,
we don't have a vehicle
not
yet
a
this year?
single one this year. You've asked a lot of people.
Okay, so moving on down to the middle of the page, transfers. Every year we transfer. Now, these transfers have not been made yet. They happen, usually in June towards the end of our budget year, but we will be transferring from the utility funds, both sewer and water, $60,000 each to general fund. There will be a transfer from the DOC geothermal of $2,000 to the town for administrative support, and then finally there'll be $20,952 to be the exact amount that will be transferred from the Berry geothermal project to the town general fund for the support of that part of the geothermal system. That, remember, is the monies, the fund that supplies the hot water to the schools and the hospital. So that's the revenue for this next year. If for general fund, town council expenditures start at the bottom of page 3. As we, again, I just want to point out where there's significant changes, and on this page there actually isn't any. Our audit fees are up a little bit. There may be, there's something called a single audit that sometimes has to be done, depending on how much federal funds that you receive for the year. We will be doing the Head Start project, and depending on how the funding of that gets divided up between the years, if it exceeds $750,000 in any one year of federal resources of any kind, then it triggers a single audit, and single audits are more involved and are more expensive to have done. I think we're going to trigger it because I expect I hope at least that all of the Head Start project actually happens between July 1st and June 30th of next year, so that should take place. On page 4, I want to go down and I guess again point out the changes. The Schmink Museum contribution. I have 0 in there at this time, and I want you guys to tell me what you want to do there. You may know that as of sometime here in the early part of the summer, I'm not sure that there's a date yet, but August maybe is the last I heard, that the Schmink Museum is going to be handed over to the county for the county to take care of. And so we were helping out the Daughters of the American Revolution when we were donating to them $1,500 a year. So I guess the question is, do you want to continue to give $1,500 to the county to support the museum or not? Now, just a side note, the council will remember that we entered into an agreement with the county to support the Schmink Museum to the tune of $10,000 in the future if Red Rock builds, and we actually get those payments that I've mentioned, the $200,000+ a year growing over time, that we would support the Schmink Museum, specifically the Schmink Museum, not the other museums, right, Sharon?
Yes.
Just the Schmink Museum going forward. So I guess I just that's a question. I guess I left that I left that blank for you to think about. Do you want to put money in towards the Schmink Museum or not?
What is the county putting in?
Well, they're going to be the manager of it. It'll be their museum to take care of going forward. So
I don't think we volunteer it.
At this point.
Yeah,
I agree.
We'll see what their
let them come begging money
Operational
for us
budget
for a
is.
change.
okay. Well, I guess that's the way I was looking at it. Really, I know I'm not the baking part necessarily, but but it is their museum. We all are already contributing through our tax dollars to the county to support whatever it is the county decides to do over there with our money, And, you know, if there's something special that comes along that they need it for, because of their taking it over, they you know, they can come and ask.
That's what I think.
If you look
They
down.
don't even know all they're gonna have to do to get
Sure.
it up and running.
Line item 1045,750, about 2/3 of the way down the page, is called special projects. And there's $10,000 budgeted there. And that's where, like this last year, we supported the LCP organization out of that. And, you know, it's kind of, when special things come along that we want to help with, that's where we do it. You know, we think that in our budgeting, that if there were something that the council felt they wanted to help the county with regards to the schmink, that there would be some funds there to be able to identify and use. So the next item below the schmink is a new item, and I wanted to point that out, and that is LCP, Lakeview Community Partnership. It's our Main Street organization. It's been operating for about a year now, a little under a year, and has a lot of projects going. I think that's really the town's economic development in a sense. Obviously, all of us do economic development to some degree as we're doing a lot of other things, but this is specifically a group that's looking at revitalizing, particularly downtown, but other parts of all of the town of Lakeview and the community as well. So they are going to be, or they have applied to the University of Oregon for a rare student. One of the employees, I guess it's a student, but it's a stipend that is paid to them, and LCP has asked a number of organizations around to help support that, as the major one being the Ford Family Foundation as a grant to try to get that rare person here to help coordinate all of the things that LCP is trying to do.
So is this specifically for a rare student, or is this for just anything? I mean, it's just money to go to them? Or
This was intended to be specifically for the rare student. As I look at this, I was thinking maybe you need to add a note behind that it is for the rare student, or rare program, maybe we should call it. The next item that I want to point out that's the other change, I mentioned it in the budget message, computer software. We use a system here at the town called Cassell. It's been in place for a number of years. There's an upgrade available, and the town really does need to move to that. Our old system is, you know, causing us issues. They're not being maintained any longer, and they do support us when we call and ask for help. But it needs to be upgraded. It would help us with a number of issues. You know, you just got to keep those things up to date. It's proposing a year at least late in doing this now. But I would suggest that we need to do this, and you know, timing is kind of important when it comes to software. There's always glitches when you install new stuff. And so I would think that this is something that ought to happen in August, maybe September, after we've closed out this year and we're kind of at the early part of the next year. There's not a lot of things that can be interfered with at that point. So that's just a word to the wise, I guess, as timing of that goes. So the cost of that is going to be in the neighborhood of $10,000. One of the reasons that I said in my budget message is there may be additional costs is that we may also need to have Cassell come here. I was actually talking with them about coming and helping us with some training on our current system, but it was finally decided that probably the effort is best put into training once a new programming system is installed. So there may be costs more than $10,000 in some training, getting some people here to train. So if that's the case, you may need to take some contingency to do that. And which brings me to the next to the last item on this page, which is the contingency that will go into the year with about $44,000 in contingency for you to use as you see necessary as the year goes along.
So
Yes, Charlie.
for line 582, software support and maintenance, That would be for the program also, or is that for other things?
Actually, Charlie, two things. We pay a monthly fee for the use of the programming, and that's where that is paid from. The other is for the new programming to be installed, getting us into the cloud, I guess, whatever that is. That's where you store stuff nowadays,
Right.
besides RAID. So there's two pieces of it. There's a monthly fee, there's an annual fee, but it's paid for monthly, and then there's a one-time charge for the upgrade.
Okay, so I was just noticing that we'd only paid out $3,400 so far this year.
Yeah,
I didn't know if the fee had dropped.
No, I've got a little note on mine, I was gonna check and see where we are, you know, why that is not somewhere closer to $7,000.
Right, yeah, okay.
The attorney on the top of page 5, you know, it is what it is a contract with Mr. Bogardus to provide legal support to the town of Lakeview, and attorneys are expensive. As are engineers, although we've spent a lot less money on our engineering this year because we've had less projects. The police department is the next item here. One of the kind of differences, it's not really a change in the overall budget, but for years we've been trying to get rid of the school resource officer position. And we haven't had one for a long time, but we kept it in our budget. For some reason, we've kept using it. So this year, insisted that we zero that out and move all that up into the patrol. That's what we have now. We have patrol, we have a police chief, and we have you know, the clerical help, the part-time person. We are now at full staff, although one of our officers is off at the academy of training and will be till towards the middle to the end of August. I can't remember what graduation date is, but I already have that written down. So we have Travis Grindle now as our police chief. We've resolved the issues with you know, the safe claim and all that with Chief Camp. He's now retired, medically retired. And so now we really, from here going forward, we're going to have a chief's position and we'll have patrol. So 4 patrol officers once our new officer gets back from the academy, and the chief. So he's a working officer, of course. So we really have 5 officers, and that's historically where we've been over the years.
Ray, does this
Yes.
give you 24-hour
No.
coverage?
It does not give us 24/7 coverage. We have well, we don't have 24-hour coverage at any time. Most of our officers go off when they are on duty at night. They go off at 2, right after the bars
2
close.
to 6?
So from 2 to 7. Travis has been coming on now as police chief. He's been coming on at 7 o'clock in the morning and doing some patrol work down around the schools. So from 2 in the morning till about 7 o'clock in the morning, we don't have any officers on. On the weekends, we don't have anybody on until a little later in the day, even than that, John. But we do try to kind of, we know when the highest incident of things taking place are. Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, afternoons, and evenings are the primary.
So you
So
focus on that.
we focus on those. Travis is our police chief. Is if there's an emergency at 4 o'clock in the morning, guess what he gets to do? He gets to deal with the dog call. Sandy and I, there was a person who called Sandy at about 2:30.
It was about 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock one morning, right after the police had went off. It was obvious that he knew when the police officers were no longer on duty.
A barking dog.
I called that a barking dog. And, anyway, I think we got that one resolved.
I know
If you're
that-
gonna call when an officer's on duty, call about 1:30 instead of a quarter after 2. Anyway, that's an inside joke. Not that funny though, really wasn't, Sandy. It really wasn't that funny, was it? I do,
Mystifying.
going down this page, there's not a, where did I, oh, it's on the next page. The only one I wanted to point out is pay item 1054-432. We've spent $8,000 there this year, and what we had to do a bunch of work to, pardon?
432 is.
432,
Is on page 5.
page 5,
Yeah.
432,
I thought we-
towards the bottom of the page. No, I haven't turned the page yet.
Okay.
We had to do some work on the microwave link to Blacktop, and this is where that was paid for out of there. It's for our radio system. That may, just to point out, as we get towards the end of June and we're able to review where we are at that point, may require a contingency transfer this year in order to cover that, although it very well may be able to be picked up in some other items within the budget without having to transfer. On page, excuse me.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but on the medical, dental, and life on 225 and 230, they remained the same, but I noticed on the town council, they were increased by a certain amount. And is that just because it's high enough already?
Yeah, they were already high enough, Charlie, so
Okay.
we should be okay.
Should be okay.
Page 6, again on the police budget, a couple of things, 3 things I want to point out. Travel, school, and training. As I said, we have an officer off to training at this time. We also, Travis Grindle, our new police chief, is going to require some training. Travis is not qualified to be certified as the police chief, but he has 2 years in order to gain those certifications and qualifications, and he's busy working on it. This spring he's taking classes through community college. He should be able to do it without any problem. I do know that there is actually the DPSST rules allow a 1-year extension of that, so he really, if he just got down to it and he just had to have it, he really has 3 years to meet the qualifications, but I don't think he'll have any problem. The next item is computer software. As I said, there's an upgrade that's needed for the police department's police records software that they use all the time. This is where that will be taken care of. Once this is done, it should be, should keep us up for some time. A little further down the page, in the middle of that 742 is a police vehicle. There's not much money there. We just need it. We need something so that if an opportunity comes along, the council then can look at purchasing a vehicle if one becomes available. As most of you know, we've been getting vehicles, hand-me-downs from BLM or Forest Service, usually pretty low mileage rigs with lots of use left in them for what we do around town. And although I know $1,000 isn't enough to buy one, again, we have contingency funds that if we can find a vehicle for $6,000, $8,000, $10,000, that would be a reason to transfer some funds from contingency in order for the police department to purchase a vehicle if one comes available. Okay. Bottom of the page, fire department. One thing I wanted to point out is the last line item there. We have spent $49,000 to date in that, and we've only budgeted 42. But what I've discovered is that we have somehow or other switched the split between 911 and fire for the cost of some services. This will go down significantly, and it'll be transferred to the 911 budget, because the way we split that up is it's 62% 911, 38% fire. So those will be switched to be. If you go back, and I went back quite a few years, you know, we've been doing this wrong for a long time. Didn't know about it.
What were those percentages?
It's 62% 911 and 38% fire savings. Page 7. I think the rest of this budget, working with Dennis, is pretty much just the same as it's been year after year. It works for him. A couple of minor adjustments up and down. I did reduce fuel in a couple of places because the price is down quite a bit, and we're just simply not using it, so not as much. And of course, you do that and the price goes back up to $2.49, I think it was last time I noticed it, yeah. Of course, we get it at Pacific Pride, which is a little less, but, you know, I don't know which way that's gonna go. Page 8, the air quality budget remains the same, as does the planning budget. Page 9, there's no transfers that we make out of general fund to other departments, so there's zeros there. There was an adjustment made in the prior year of $9,000. We entered some tax payment into this fund and it should have been put in the debt service fund, so it was moved to the right place. But typically, no, as you can see from there, no expenses, so. That covers general fund. The next item is the HUD, it's called HUD Special Project. Years ago, there was a community development block grant that did some weatherization upgrades here in the town of Lakeview. Much of that money was repaid to the town, but there's still a little bit. The one that comes to my mind is June Getty pays us $5 a month is regular as clockwork, is one, for example. So that money, we do have to account for it still for a couple more years. I believe that the CDBG was either in 1999 or 2001. I've lost track now. I think it was 2001. After that, we'll no longer have to track it any longer. It's got a 20-year life. You know, the CDBG that we're working on for Head Start has got the same thing. So we'll have that one for another 20 years. So 911 is the one I mentioned in my budget message that is not balanced during the year, but there's money that we've earned but we haven't received yet, and I think that's important to note that our agreement with the Intergovernmental Council for 911 that kind of set up the system we're currently working under allows that the town, as the contractor, is entitled to the money that was earned for the period of time that we did the work. And so for the work that we do next April, May, and June, when that tax money comes back, is distributed back from the state of Oregon, that's our money. It's not anybody else's. Now, I'm not suggesting that we're not going to continue to do 911, but I do know that we need to have a discussion. We need to get into this discussion again with the county, and I'm going to look at the county as being the lead because the Intergovernmental Council is, again, really hasn't functioned. I asked the county last year to organize a meeting, and they didn't do it. We haven't had a meeting now, I think, for like 3 years.
It's been 3.
I think it's been 3 years. So, that was kind of the problem for many years ago, and then we got a little more active, and as soon as there wasn't anything exciting to argue about, then they didn't want to meet any longer, and they went from monthly meetings to quarterly meetings to now no meetings. So we got to get that going again, because truly we are going to be almost out of money. When you look at how much money is going to be available, there may be a couple of $3,000, $5,000 still left after we've received the money a year from now. But there won't be very much, and it's going to take $50,000, $60,000 a year to balance this budget going forward. When you add it to the dispatch fees, the 911 tax from the state of Oregon, and then whatever other local support. We've been using beginning fund balance because we've had it, but now we've used it up. So something else has to be done going forward. Again, our contract for providing these services says we're supposed to give notice by the end of December of each year if we're not going to continue to do the work in the future. We shouldn't be doing that. We need to just all get together and figure out how we're going to do this, because it's the way this works fire is important to 911 and 911 is important to fire. We share those employees. We're able to work them 24-hour days under a special exemption that the state allows. And if we don't have fire and 911 together, then 911 employees would actually be restricted to 40-hour work weeks and other things that would cause the staff to have to be much larger, and it would cause some overtime issues even worse than we have. So now the other thing I wanted to point out in this fund, though, as we go down through it, is under annual assessments, you'll see that has $68,500. That's where the rural fire deposit got put instead of back into the general fund. So there's about $44,000 of that needs to be moved back to general fund. With that said, there's $5,000 that we're still to receive from Bureau of Land Management, and the town will be transferring $20,000, which is our 911 annual fee that we pay to 911 from town into this fund. So at the end of the day, the $49,000 is what will be there. So that's a good number. It's just at the moment we've got 44,000 here that shouldn't be. So going on down into the budget, again, it's mostly payroll. On page 12, I mentioned this split of the medical insurance between fire and 911. You can see the top item here on this page shows that only $21,000 has been spent out of this line, and we've got a $58,000 budget. Obviously, that needs to be switched with the fire. We just got them in the wrong place, so those will be. They probably already have been corrected, but this is a March 31st summary that we're looking at.
So this big figure at the bottom comes out of taxes, right? 385,000?
No, it cut 90. This is made up of 911 taxes. It's made up of local dispatch fees that are paid by the various agencies that pay the $49,000 that are paid in. And then the rest of it is money that still exists from 911 taxes, again, your telephone tax, that has been being used by the town over time. Till at this point, as I said, we're down to out of that money by the end of this coming year, this year that we're budgeting for it. So they're not your property taxes or income taxes, they are your telephone, your 75-cent telephone tax.
This is a big number to me.
It is a big number.
Quarter of a million is coming from the 911
Tax.
phone assessment.
Yeah, I see that up here.
I think, and rural counties are still arguing, and we may get a settlement out of this someday. I think the 911 tax is way out of line as far as the income that's coming from it. We used to get more than we're getting now. And then when cell phones came, I mean, everybody's got a cell phone. Most families have 2 or 3 or 4, however many kids they have, have a cell phone. Other devices can call 911, yet we're collecting less tax than we did, 5 years ago for some reason. It's nuts. Apparently the Department of Revenue tells the emergency services people at the state of Oregon, where this comes from, that they don't have any way. It's the honor system of the phone companies to let them know how much tax they're collecting and how many phones they have that should be paying the tax, and that just doesn't seem. It seems like they should know how many there are and how to tax it. I know that there's a lot of effort going on by the smaller 911 centers like Lakeview and Tri-Counties and Burns and all to try to get this figured out, because we think there's a significant amount of money out there that we're not getting that we should be. But I don't know if that, I wouldn't count on that's going to get resolved in time for, before this crunch of how we're going to fund 911 going forward happens. If and when it happens, great. We can fall back on that. But until it does, we really shouldn't count. We've been arguing this with them for 3 or 4 years, and we haven't got it resolved yet.
The argument.
Yeah.
46 grand upside down though.
Yeah. Our payment, we should be due at the 1st of July or during the first quarter of the next budget year, 2017-18, somewhere between $60,000 and $65,000. So if our budget is correct, depending on how close we are, theoretically we'll have somewhere between $14,000 and $19,000 excess funds next year, depending on what that payment is in June or in July or August that we get. So, we're not really out of balance. We're out of balance within the current year, but if you take an accrual basis, look at it, we're okay.
Didn't the
But we
county,
can't go any further.
didn't the county used to have a fund for 911
They did, yeah.
special allocations?
The county is today collecting property taxes because there was a 911 levy in 1997 when Measure 50 passed. There were two levies. There was a 911 levy and there was a landfill levy. The landfill levy was twice as large as the 911 levy. I had Phil Israel from time to time kind of update me on what the value of that would have been if it were still being collected as 911. After the Ruby Pipeline came through, which is paying the tax, the value of that is in excess of $160,000 a year that we're paying, that the county's collecting because there was a 911 tax in 1997. What happened was these two taxes, the entities that they were supporting, 911 and the landfill, went away as on your tax rolls. There were no longer special levies, but Measure 50 said, we're going to incorporate the value of those levies, say it was $1 for one and $2 for the other, we're going to incorporate those into the county's general fund tax base. So if their tax base was $3 and they got $1 because there was a 911 levy, it became $4. Then they did have a reduction of about 20, I think it was 22 or 24%. So they didn't get the full value, but they got a lot of it. And then the legislation went on to say that money that they received should be spent on public safety and education. So that's what Measure 50 did. And what the county did was, in the case of 911, we had money at the time that we didn't know, nobody needed 911 money, so they just said, okay, we'll forget about that. They kept putting money, and they still do today, put some money towards the landfill for the closure fund and a few other things that they do out there, but it's nowhere near $320,000 to $40,000 that they're actually still collecting because there was a tax at that point in time. I'm sorry that I digressed, but the money is over there, and it's been a long time ago.
With 911, people that, have been involved with the 911 thing for a long time, it's really been a bone of contention, but never getting that.
I sat at a budget committee meeting like this one in probably 1997, I suppose it might have been 98, and one of the county commissioners, we were talking about this very thing, about giving money to 911, and the county commissioner that I was sitting by at that time said, well, they don't need any money, so we don't need to put any there, we'll let that go. And it's never had any money.
It's never surfaced since then.
End of the discussion. So there's your, this is the major fund issue for the town going forward this coming year, and until we get that resolved somehow rather than just some kind of stable, secure funding for it. And I'm confident that the town and the county and the city of Paisley and the fire districts and the ambulance services and all the rest of them that are involved in this will figure out a way to get this done, because it's important to all of us. The next one, page 14, is the street fund. Actually, this is the other fund that, in my opinion, that's vulnerable, but we're okay, at this point in time, because we're able to get by. So we'll have a beginning fund balance again of in the neighborhood of $40,000. Mike, you asked about gas tax, where it says state highway funds under intergovernmental revenues of $140,000. That's state gas tax. I've increased that a little, even though the price of gas is down, the tax is still the same, and people are driving more and they're using more gas. It's projected that our gas tax incomes are going to be up a little bit. This year, we will be able to apply for a small cities allotment grant, the one that says $50,000 for 16-17. These are funds set aside by the state of Oregon for small cities to apply for on a every other year basis. It turns out to be every other year because you get a grant, you do a project and close it out, and it usually takes more than a year to go through that process. And so you can't apply for a new one until you finish the other one. So the way the cycle works, it's just about an every other year project. I don't know. I don't have a project at this point in time. I do know that the schools would like to do some safety improvements down around the schools with some flashing lights and signs and some stuff to improve children's safety, particularly around the bus stops and so forth. That's one of the things in the back of my mind for how we might use this money, but it's not going to take $50,000 so to do that. So we'll have to come up with other things, the council and Jeff Marshall and myself. So, but I do intend to apply for something. We can't pass up the opportunity. Shouldn't pass up the opportunity, I guess, I would say.
We'll find something.
CMAQ funds are air quality monies. We have gotten a pile of money over the years for air quality for in connection with transportation. And where we've been using this money mostly has been purchasing street sweepers. We've purchased 2 in the time I've been here. Just purchased one last summer, fall. Street sweepers were about $300,000. But we still have remaining $298,000. Actually, there's a movement underway by the federal government to start giving cities like us that are in these programs $65,000 a year of additional money. So this could grow. That is not a done deal yet, but you know, we may actually have more money coming down the road. These have to do things to reduce dust, is primarily, you know, or it could be used for diesel. If you have a fleet of diesel trucks or buses, it takes a lot of them. You can use it to do retrofitting to natural gas or other kinds of fuels, or in our case, the other project that the town used CMAQ 4 years ago was when we paved Rabbit Hill Road in the urban growth boundary out to the prison. We used CMAQ funds out to the edge of the urban growth boundary there at Rabbit Hill Road and Geyser View Lane. There is a plan for this, but it's probably at least a year away, and again, it depends on what happens with Red Rock. A big chunk of this is targeted to be spent on paving Cadmus Road between the highway and Lakeview Ready Mix, so that all the truck traffic and all using, going down to the Red Rock facility will be on pavement instead of dust. Again, we're adjusting that property. The road is in the urban growth boundary, and everything in the urban growth boundary is eligible for funding. So that's a place that the money, but it won't happen for another year. We don't really want to pave it until the project is finished or nearly finished, because no use of beating it up with construction traffic. You might as well save it for when they're hauling chips in there. So that's the income piece of that. On expenses, one of the things that we're doing here is we're reducing, to help this fund a little bit, is we're reducing patching costs. You know, most of the patching that we do in our streets are really because we dig them up for fixing sewer and water issues. There's some crack sealing that we do that are just, you know, age and whatever, but so we're moving a lot of this patching cost into we're going to take care of it in the water and sewer fund in the future. Okay. Page 16, the only thing on here is about halfway down the page at 735. It is where the expense of the small cities allotment funds would be if we receive a grant. So if you bring it in, you got to spend it, and it balances out. So whatever that project is, there's the $50,000 expenditure. If we don't get it if we may get the grant, and if we don't get it done until after the 1st of July of next year, it'll just carry forward into the next year. The park fund, this is where we operate primarily the swimming pool out of. The other thing what we do here is take care of the MC chuck wagon. But we get reimbursed from the MC chuck wagon historical committee. Has been $3,500. I'm asking them for $4,000 this year of reimbursement for the cost of the power, the phone, the insurance, and those sorts of costs down there. Well, we have a phone line, yes, because there's an alarm. There's an alarm.
Oh, to the
that calls
emergency services.
Yeah, and it works, by the way. I found that out.
Oh, you tried to get in, huh?
I went down there one day and the next thing I know, here's Travis and one of the other guys outside there. I think it's Ray. It was. I thought I'd shut the alarm off, but apparently I'd shut it off, but only temporarily. I did go down there one time and locked myself in that place. Actually, there's a partition, and the saddles are all kind of at that east or west end, and there's a big partition wall. And so I went in there, I went in there and was doing some stuff, and my keys were out in the pickup, or out in the other room anyway, and I kind of looked around and the door came shut and it latched. There's a little latch on it. And there I was. I climbed up on top of the partition because you can go over the top of it, but it was too far down the other side, so I called Travis again. Today, Travis.
Guess what?
I'll never live that one down, I'm sure. So anyway, I just want to point out in the swimming pool, the park fund on page 17, that although the revenue is only $5,000, most of our income comes in June when we sell seasons passes and all that, so I'm pretty confident that we're going to be okay. We're going to have a little longer season this year. We've had kind of short season because of when school was out and all. This year is going to be a little longer. This year too, we do have 2 swim meets locally, which is good for our community, and the regular and the district meet. We transfer in from our special fund that we have, this program support fund, $40,000 is what I've identified to transfer in. That's what we're doing this year. I project to do that again next year. That fund, we'll get to it in a minute, but that fund was set up from a rate increase a number of years ago in a water and sewer fund, and we took a piece of it off to create a fund that we could use, the council could use to do special things or do things that needed to be done. And this one obviously is a place we need to spend money every year to keep the pool operating. So that's what we're doing with it. Under park fund expenses, page 18, I've raised our costs a little bit for employees. It's probably more than it's going to need to be because we are actually not going to hit into that minimum wage issue this year. But we'll spend only what we need to spend there anyway. As you go on down through the budget, I don't really see much else other than the payroll costs.
What about,
I was going to say utilities is one I was going to point out. I think this is the one. Where is it? Our new system, at least, is what I was going to say, is more efficient than what we've been. All of the new pumps and, pardon? 410. There it is. Yeah, I think we changed our power. We're doing electronic payments, and when we've done that, we're having a problem with all of the payments coming across the computer system. Again, it's back to this old programming Cassell thing. So we're having to actually hand do them now, go back and some things that were coming, we thought were coming through weren't. And so we're probably a couple of months behind there, but as far as power goes, the new pumps that we put in are much more efficient than the old 1957 pumps or whatever they were that were up there before. So we have reduced our costs.
You're
What
gonna
is
take-
the cost for the maintenance? Is that,
You know, that's a lot of the cost of getting started in the spring, you know, fixing filters, buying, you know, this year we may buy a new pool cover sometime in June. Not the really expensive ones, probably the, you know, but a new pool cover, some kind of, this one pretty much is, I think it's beyond using again this year. Chlorine,
does that cover, the guy who goes around and mows all of our places and?
no,
is that
he's up
just
under
the-
park maintenance,
You would
up
be-
at the employee at the top, although
Yeah,
it
park
would
maintenance.
cover any costs of the lawnmowers and, you know, sometimes we have to fix sprinkler heads and other things that go on in the parks.
Do we have the same employee?
Yes,
Good.
Delby, in fact, he is gonna start tomorrow.
Oh, good.
Did you ever,
Delbert McLean.
yeah, did you ever have any trouble, luck with geothermal you were drawing?
Well, you know, we looked at the geothermal up there at the pool, but we actually weren't able to get any hotter water. You know, it's about, John, were you ever up there doing any of the testing? I think it's about 82 degrees, so it's warm compared to drinking water. It's actually, I learned last year, maybe it was the year before, when the first year we had the new pool in operation, when they were getting ready for the swim meet, that there's a range that the temperature of the water has to be for sanctioned swim meets, and it's I believe it's from 68 to 76 degrees. So you know, as far as having, you know, it's sure nice for us old folks to go swim in warm water, but that isn't the way they need it for the pool. But we are able to add some water. Actually, this spring, Jeff is going to do a little bit of plumbing up there that is going to help make it easier for the pool employees to add warm water and let existing water out. The way it is now is it's kind of complicated, and if you don't do it right, you can over-pressurize the system and blow up plastic pipes and stuff. So we're putting in another valve that will allow us to do it differently, and then kids then will be able to do it without it being
Sounds good.
without running risk of damaging the system.
Are we gonna try and change the town tennis courts and make that a basketball, or is that?
Well, it isn't going to happen this year. The Lions Club, Kevin Sturba requested some funds from the Lions Club for a basketball, or 2 basketball hoops. And had the Lions Club funded that, then we would have replaced one of the tennis courts, taken one net down and put up the hoops. But the Lions Club didn't fund it. Actually, you know, another year, if we really want to do that project, the town needs to be the applicant. I think that's what confused or was the concern of the Lions Club. So there are those that want to keep a tennis court up there, though. There's folks that like to come up here and play tennis, a few, instead of going down to the ones at the school. So, but there are those who think that we need a basketball spot too. But there was one by the middle school, and I think that's pretty much gone away with all of the construction and stuff they've done down there. So there's outdoor basketball is kind of limited apparently.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, it won't happen this year, Sharon. I talked to Kevin about it and suggested that next year we needed to start a little earlier and make it a town
Is
council
that also
application if
a
everybody wants to do it.
possibility for McDonald Fund?
There probably would be. It really wasn't a very expensive project.
No.
It was only, I don't remember, was it $2,000 roughly for this stuff, and our public works guys were going to install them.
Yeah.
So I got to say, it's, you know, we've got a new public works director. It's Jeff Marshall, who's been with us for a number of years, and Ron Wookey, who had been our public works director for God knows how long, a lot longer than I've been here. But maybe it's just that Jeff is new and wanting to make everybody happy. But you know, I can go say, hey Jeff, can you guys install those basketball hoops if we get a grant for them? And he said, oh sure. And Ron would have said something else. And then he probably came around and said, well, I guess we can. But you know, he was cautious about how involved they would get in those sorts of things.
That's because he knew that once he starts it, then he gets it forever. Like
Yeah.
monitoring the-
And I'm pretty cautious
outside
with
here.
Jeff's willingness to do things that we don't ask him to do too much, too far afield. I just talked to him today about one we're looking at. You'll have it at the council meeting on Tuesday next week, making an application to the Pacific Power Foundation for funds to put a flagpole at the MC chuck wagon. And if we get that grant, I've asked Jeff if his crew would be able to dig the hole and put the pole in place. And he said they could, so we again, ask for a few things, but be careful how much. Okay, page 21 is our flood control fund. Still in flood control fund. This is the one that, if you recall, that we added $1 to the water sewer bills. The resolution that established this said that we would build up a fund to about $50,000. And then once we got there, we'd take it off, and when it got down to $25,000, then we'd put it back on again. So we capped out. Actually, we got well over $50,000 before we got it taken out of the system. A little over $53,000, but so we're on our way now. The other direction, what we're doing with this fund is we do two things. This winter, for the first time in a couple of years, we actually had to pay for snow removal from people's driveways. And that was about $9,000. And the other thing we're doing with this is we're paying for some juniper control work we're doing up Bullard Canyon, and that's looked at as being flood and fire prevention by getting rid of the juniper, and we think that we're going to reduce the chances of wildfire, which then results in excessive runoff and erosion into the Bullard Canyon that plugs up our systems, and also we're spending, there'll be $36,000 total. We're spending $12,000 the year we're currently in. We'll spend $12,000 more next year, and then the following year, and then we'll have that project taken care of. You get a chance to drive up the canyon and see how much juniper, although it hasn't been burned. They wanted to burn last fall, but we were already into our air quality season, and I said, I think the town needs to live up to it. I know I'd love to burn it up, but we're just not going to do that. So we're going to have to wait to find just the right opportunity to burn, hopefully this fall. But it's doing a lot. It's looking really nice up there, if you can imagine it without the big piles of brush. John, did you have a question?
No, I just said I did see that,
Okay.
and I didn't know the city was doing it.
You didn't, or did?
I
Well,
didn't. Now I do.
now you do. Actually, Oregon Department of Forestry is doing the work, and they have a grant that's paying a lot more of it than what we're paying.
Looks good.
Our $12,000 is just the match.
Looks good.
Prison crews are doing the piling, so that's something that they're getting to do. Get out of Warner Creek and go up there and work. Okay, page 22 is the back on the flood control fund. Probably during the 2017-18 season, maybe the following year, you'll probably be looking at putting that dollar back on to build it back up again. Wood stove replacement. This is some money that we've had for loans. We occasionally loan out money to do wood stove replacements, and we have loans out there that are paying us back from time to time. Occasionally, some of these are on. When a home sells, we get the full amount of it back all at once. The town can loan this money back out again if they're wanting to at the moment. And for the last couple of years, there's been a number of wood stove replacement programs that have come down from the state that SCOED has been managing for the town, and that's South Central Oregon Economic Development District. And so we really haven't had much need to use this ourselves, but at some point when we are maybe not having state resources again to do that, we'll have several $1,000s here to use to continue on some kind of program if you desire to do that. So it just is building up at the moment. Page 23 is the bike trails. Actually, a little bit of our gas tax comes into this fund. 1% is required by state law to come into this fund. So And that, as I look at that, I'm thinking if I got $140,000 in income in the street fund, this ought to be $1,400 here, so I need to change that.
Beginning,
Not the beginning fund, the second one down, the number 550, the 1% state airport
Okay.
bike path, that should be $1,400. Which means that down at the bottom, I need to add $50 to one of those line items and onto the bottom to make it balance. Again, this money, last year we used a little of this money to, or I guess it was the year before actually, we used it to build curbs down by the soccer field, the new soccer field. Because when they get that all finished, there will be a bike path. I gotta break that part up. How do you connect this to bikes? Well, that will be a bike path along the baseball field, soccer field, down to the, out to 3rd Street. So that is the connection. I just better make that clear. Page 25 is the, this is the fund that we use to transfer monies to the parks. It also has additional funds in it. The rest of the money that comes in here every year so far has just been left in this. It's a grant. It was intended to be like a fund to be used for grants if there was a project come along. And not that it is, but I'll just use Main Street as a possibility. Let's say there was a Park and Rec grant or maybe an ODOT grant for $1 million to do a streetscape treatment on E Street, for example. This fund then could be used for, if there's a 10% match to that or a 20% match, this fund could be, the balance of it that we're not transferring to parks could be used for that match fund, for example. And that's a big example. You know, there's lots of smaller ones that come along from time to time and opportunities. But as the need arises and there's nowhere else to do it, this fund could be used for that. In the meantime, we put whatever's needed to balance the pool fund, and the rest of it stays here and builds up. As you can see, by the end of this coming year, this fund should be in excess of $200,000 after we've transferred money to the park. So we're getting a nice nest egg of funds here that we were talking about when we created this wanting to do. We raised water rates, water and sewer rates, $4.50, and this has been 7 or 8 years ago. I don't.
Quite a while ago.
6, 7 years ago, something like that. $2.25 of that stayed in the water and sewer department to help their funds. The other $2.25 came to this fund. That's what it's for. It's been a whopping success, I think. Building fund, there's just been some money that's been sitting there. It's never been spent for anything. We have no interest to it every year. That fund could be used if there's some building remodeling project we want to do. This is one, but yeah.
Carpeting?
This could
Not
be
your
used.
choice.
That's right.
You're
Yeah.
the committee that gets to choose the carpet.
Yes, it won't be me. Anyway, carpeting in Town Hall would be a good example of this. We didn't do it, but last winter we had an employee at 911 who was on administrative leave and for a while, and I worked with our union and our employee while he was being paid to not be working, but he had some carpenter skills, and so I had him here at Town Hall. We replaced the countertop at the sink out in the break room. He put doors on the closet in the other meeting room, the next door. He put together and actually leveled the floor out where Don's office is. That floor tapered off almost 2 inches to the wall. So he leveled the floor up. Don would, after her chair would roll up underneath the desk. So we leveled the floor up, and I had Corey doing this, and then he assembled that desk that was, we purchased that with Lakeview Ministries, if you recall, and put that together for us. So, but that would be a kind of a project that we could have used this fund for. We could have paid him out of this, as well as, we actually just paid him out of general fund, and we have another temporary employee fund there in Town Hall, and that's what we paid him. But we got to take advantage of his skills and actually put him to work for a little while, doing a few odd things. He did some work down in Public Works as well. So this is just another fund that is there to use someday. As you can see, we budgeted in every year. We budget to spend the whole thing. We just never do. But we could if we wanted to. Fire truck fund is the same thing. This fund actually was created a number of years ago when the mayor, when I first came to work at the town, Rick Watson, did not want his paycheck. And so he donated that money specifically into the fire truck fund. We've used it. If you look back in the far history, we've spent $10,000 to buy one of the ladder trucks that we have at that point in time. That's another piece of equipment that we have actually down there. We have 2 ladder trucks and we only need one, but they're not quite ready to sell the other one.
We don't have any more money really coming into this.
No, there's no new source of
Once
money
it's gone,
coming into
it's
that.
gone.
So once it's gone, unless the town decides to transfer some money into it from the program fund maybe or something, it'll go away. But there is still some there. Systems Development Fund fees on page 30. The town, whenever somebody builds a new house, and for example, Greg Chandler is just starting to build a new house down on, is it Mountain View? It's on Mountain View, but it's actually on the little cul-de-sac outside. It's got a different name. But anyway, he has to pay systems development fees in the amount of $819 is what it'll be. It's broken out here as to how much it is for water, sewer, streets, and parks. And this is, these funds are intended to over time create some reserves to be used for capital expenditures back towards any one of those particular 4 items that they're collected for. In past years, as you can see, we've not budgeted for, we've just budgeted as ending fund balance. As I got to looking at it this year, I thought, we really should be budgeting those to be spent in the same categories as we're collecting them in, so that if a project comes along that the council wants to spend some of these for a water project or something that, here's another source of funds to be able to use. For example, if we did want to do a water treatment system 2 or 3 years from now, we could use the capital portion of this that's for water into that project. So it's probably been a mistake not to budget to spend it in the past. Now we're budgeting to spend it. The street paving project on page 31 is, we're done with that. That's all been, and we really can, when we figure out how, we'll delete this out of our system and eliminate a page of our budget. Page 32 is Bullard Canyon. Again, there's very little going on at Bullard Canyon now. We have done a lot of work up there over the last several years, but at this point in time, all that's going on up there is this juniper project, and the $12,000 comes in from the snow and flood fund, and on page 33, it gets spent. We get invoiced each year for the state forestry for the $12,000 to match their work. At this time, that's all that's going on up there. Okay, page 34 gets into the utility funds. This is the water and sewer funds. I talked a little bit about those in the budget message. This fund is pretty adequately funded. We're able to every year take on, a significant improvement project of some kind or other, replacing water or sewer lines, main lines, and this year, as I pointed out, we're going to do the 3rd Street lift station. It's actually our biggest and main lift station. If it doesn't work well, lots of things don't work well. So we want it to work well. And it's got quite a bit of deterioration, so this summer we'll be working on that project. I don't know if they've started yet. I've been talking to Daryl about developing the plans to get ready to go out to bid here soon, sometime in June or July for that project. So the things that I've added to this go down towards the bottom of the revenue. 860, 61, 62, and 63 are new items. When it says SPWFRR, that is Special Public Works Funds from the state of Oregon, and it's for Red Rock biofuels. These funds would extend the water and sewer mains from near Lakeview Ready Mix, where they're already in M Street, up to just east of where Dog Lake Construction's driveway is, which is where the driveway will be if there ever is one, to Red Rock. So the plan is, and we're working on agreements, and maybe in the next one or two council meetings, we may have something for the council to review on accessing the state's public works funds, special public works funds for this project. Red Rock is going to pay for the entire cost. Part of it's a grant, 155,000 of it would be a grant, 97,000 round figures would have to be a loan to the town, but Red Rock is agreeing through these negotiations that we're having that they'll pay for all of those costs, including the loan, and any fees that are associated with it, any interest that may accrue, and as soon as the project is finished, then the whole project will be paid off, and this loan will only be a temporary loan. But we have to be the applicant. The Special Public Works funds have to come to a county or a city. So we'll see if that all works out. The total cost of this project is about $252,000. And then there also you see the $30,000 for a master plan update through Oregon Economic Development, Business Oregon, I guess is what they call themselves nowadays. There are funds available to pay for master plan updates, water or sewer master plan update. As I said in my budget message, in order for us to be eligible for certain state funds, such as for a water treatment system, if we wanted to have one, we will have to have an updated master plan that includes that as part of the.
Who does the master plan?
We would hire it to be done.
So that's what this is for, is to hire someone to
It
do
would be, we'd contract somebody to do it, and probably it'd be our engineer that would do this. So that's what it's about. As I said, our master plan was done in 2001, so it's only about 15 years old. They tend to be closer to 20 years old before they fund redoing them. But I've started having those discussions with Oregon Health Department. Actually has to first tell us who licenses our water systems. They first have to say, you need to do an update, because you've got this issue or that issue or something else. And once we have that letter from them, then we can go to Business Oregon and apply for the funds. So the state health department is a little bit hesitant because we're only 15 years into the master plan instead of closer to 20. We may get it this year, we may not. If we get it, here's the income would come into here, and I've also got a line item for where it'll be spent in the water department. Okay, so moving on to page 35. If you go down to line item 50, 51, 331, there's the $30,000 for the master plan if we get the grant and we go forward with it, that's where it'll get spent. I want to go down to line 730, which is capital improvements. $276,000 in this fund. I've got the specifics as to how that breaks out. I was going to just say that $126,000 of that is for the Cadmus Road water main. If in fact we do that and get $150,000 of this is for, as I mentioned in my budget message, some water line, main line improvements on 9th Street, as well as down by ProBuild on 4th Street on the highway.
How much was that, Rick?
$150 for those two projects. And the other, again, 126 is the water main part of the Red Rock project. Okay. On page 36 is the, I just want to point out the contingency. We have $100,000 contingency there, which, again, if one of these projects costs more than we expect it will, here's where you would dip into for whatever additional funds you may need to take care of that. That would be a council decision to make. Now I'm getting myself mixed up here, get the right pages in the right place. In the sewer department, again, I want to go to the capital on page 37. In this case, it's line item 730. There's $426,000 there. $300,000. Let me get to my notes so I make sure I got them right. Where did that go? $300,000 of that is the lift station down on South 3rd Street, and $126,500 is the sewer main on Cadmus Road for Red Rock, if that project, actually happens.
126.
126.5. Again, because we have a significant project going on in this budget, we budgeted $100,000 of contingency down on line 850 of that page as well. Hopefully we won't need it. At the lower part of the page, you see the transfers to other, the $120,000 that comes to general fund annually, and the $67,200 that goes to the project support fund, the grant match fund. Okay, the next budget is the geothermal north, the prison DOC. This budget is pretty lean. We've moved actually because it's the Berrywell project is our business venture, I guess I would say. We have all of our employee expenses of the geothermal systems are in the Berrywell. They're not in this fund any longer. So in this fund we have we'll have income of roughly $50,000 from DOC. I would tell you that I have had some preliminary discussions with DOC about changing the way we build this. This is extremely inexpensive for DOC. If we were, the history of this is that the state paid a lot of the cost of the development of the project to start with. There's a 26-year period that the state is paying bonds that built the prison, as well as the infrastructure that went to it, the water, sewer, geothermal, and all that. So back in 2005, 2004, when we were negotiating, when the town was negotiating this, I guess, they made this deal that was works out to be about $3 per million BTUs. It's cheaper than natural gas if we had it. It's really cheap. I've been talking with Doug Young, who was the DOC engineer. Some of you may remember him or know of him, about readdressing this and looking at turning it in. It's based on gallons that they pump. It's not based upon the amount of heat that they're using. And so I'd like to change this to like we're doing with the hospital and the schools. It's basic. We're measuring the BTUs. We have a meter out there. We read it every day. We know exactly how many million BTUs they're using here. And I'd like to switch from from gallons to BTUs to something that really is how you measure heat. And I'm thinking that if this was somewhere in the neighborhood of $8, recognizing the investment that the state put into the system, started with, if it was around $8 per million BTUs, that would raise the income of this fund to somewhere in the neighborhood of $120,000 to $130,000 a year. It would still be extremely cheap for the state, and it would be much more equitable for us. So we're working on that. I don't know if it's going to come to fruition this next year or not, but we're looking at that. Apparently, I learned this from talking with Doug Young this last spring. When they negotiated this, people at the state, at DOC, who were negotiating the state side of this, could not understand how to convert reducing the temperature of a gallon of water to some amount, how to convert that to BTUs. And so they could only fathom gallons, how many gallons the water is being pumped. And so they ended up, because they couldn't get DOC to understand conversions to BTUs, they ended up having this based on gallons of water pumped. And it's just bizarre to me. It doesn't make any sense. So anyway, most of these expenses are, I do have one change I will need to make to this fund, by the way, on page 40. I've got a contingency here of $5,900. But I did discover that I had forgot to put the $2,000 transfer to general fund for administrative fees. So we need to add $2,000 down on the bottom line there on 910, which will reduce the contingency to $3,900. Just, yeah, there's some other things being talked about with regards to this to this well out, the DOC system. As most of you know, we now own the water rights to the Utley well, but we haven't developed it yet. And I don't think it's a secret that the marijuana, some of the marijuana businesses are interested in helping us to develop the Utley well and bringing it online for their business, for greenhouses that they want to develop out in that area. Now, whether that happens or not, there's a lot of obstacles to that, besides the political issues. So we'll see where that goes as a group. But there are interests in how we might, we've got a lot of resource out there that we're not using. There may be in the next year some opportunities come up for you to consider how to put that to work. So page 41 is the Barry geothermal project. This project works sweet. This is kind of like the utility funds. We put this together really nicely for everybody. I think the schools and the hospital are getting heat for about $14.33 this year. It'll go up a little bit next year by, I think I did the calculation, I think it's 2.1% or something is the cost of living adjustment that goes into certain parts of the rate. But this is still in the neighborhood of half of the cost of electricity, and probably about 2/3 the cost of propane. The price of propane has come down along with gasoline and diesel fuel, so that's down a little bit, but it's still less expensive than the alternatives that are here. And it's pretty trouble-free. We did have one leak this year that you can't expect them to go forever, I guess, or to never have an issue with them, but we were offline for part of the day, most of the day, I guess, because of that water leak. But about 30 days out of warranty, of course. There was a clamp around the pipe, supposedly stainless steel.
Murphy's Law.
Supposedly stainless steel, and there was an air relief valve on the top. It was for when they were filling it, and that stainless steel shouldn't last for a long time, but it corroded and rusted through right across the bottom, and whether it maybe was damaged somehow when it was put in, scratched or cut or something that allowed it to deteriorate, or or it really wasn't what was supposed to be there. I don't know, but it failed nonetheless, and we had a lot of hot water out on the backside of Birch Street, but
Lots of steam.
lots of steam, yeah. So anyway, we got it fixed, and you know, everything's back going well. Now, one of the things that is going to happen with this project is that Head Start is going to be a user on this system, and that should happen during this next, during this year that we're budgeting for now. We estimate that, and they have applied for a grant from Ford Family, approximately $70,000, and among other things, sidewalks and other things that they need to do at the Head Start facility, also paying for the geothermal line extensions from the road, or from M Street up to this, about a block and a half roughly, is $40,000. Now, if for some reason they don't get their $40,000, or the grant from Ford Family, or they get only part of it, you know, I have suggested to them that I thought the town would be interested, at least since we're the CDBG for this project anyway, in working out a loan to them for it, and they could pay it over time with their
So they
with
pay
their
back
payment.
their usage fee plus
Plus the
the
loan.
loan.
Yeah. So, you know, at this point, the last time I checked with Vicki Taylor, she had some pretty optimistic discussions with Ford Family, but they have not made the decision yet as to whether or not they're going to get the funds they asked for.
I think the first year that the school went on it, they estimated that they'd save $180,000, wasn't it? On their
It was
fuel
something like
costs.
that.
At least that, and I think they went over that.
And, you know, the hospital is and Jen knows this, the hospitals is such a complex system that it's really hard to be able to say where the heat is used there. What we do know is when you measure the temperature of the water and the flow coming in and going back out, we know how many million BTUs less is in the water. So we know it's going into the facility somewhere. They're using it, they're using that much less other things.
But they did notice the other day, what they did mention at one of the board meetings recently was
Oh, when it went offline?
Well, that too, I mean, they did see that influx of use
Sure.
in other, but we haven't had to fill and I know they use propane for some things. I wanna say it might be housekeeping or laundry services.
They have.
We haven't had to fill it in
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah.
So I mean, just that change right there, they said is a big savings that they could actually
So whatever the
see.
number is, you know, the 9,000 million BTUs per year that they contract for is going into the facility somewhere. You know, we know it's going in because it's not coming out. So you know, whether it's heating hot water for the kitchen or whether it's heating the water system just to heat the facilities, it's going in there. Now there is some interest in the new facilities that are going to be built back behind are going to be heated with geothermal. You know, we've already built that into our rate, so this rate, the amount of money, you know, these won't be online for another year. So probably in this budget year we're budgeting for, we won't have new income, maybe at the tail end of it, from these new facilities that the hospital's going to be building. So I didn't try to calculate that in. Whatever comes in, and we don't need to worry about that. Also, there's some interest, and I don't know if they're getting there, but the clinics portion of the hospital is not on the geothermal system, and they are looking at maybe utilizing the heat pumps and the geothermal water there or something. And I heard that there's even some thoughts about building over the entryway, the courtyard sort of between
They're
the
talking
clinics.
to, yeah,
They're closing that
need more
eventually,
space,
not
and so,
right
yeah.
away, but
Yeah.
so the hospital's going to use more over time. Anyway, this fund, you know, this is working well. We got, you know, it just has. You know, I don't know what else to say other than.
We're paying off the loan, and
Pay.
they're paying us to do so, and they're getting heat at cheap.
They're getting less, they're getting heat for less,
That's
so
a win.
it worked for everybody, yeah. One of the, you know, just to shed light on this situation, you know, we send water back to our reinjection well from the hospital at around 125 to 130 degrees going back in the ground. And the 42nd group who bought the McFarland door or Warner Mountain Recycling, whichever you want to refer to it as, they're interested in using our return water for heating of their facilities there that they're developing it. And again, we've already pumped the water and we've sold it once. We sold the heat that's been taken out of it. We're going to get a chance to, it looks like, to maybe recover some more money from that. We'll see how that develops. Okay. So the final budget is really one that we don't have much control over, but this is, it's called the debt service fund, and this is the fund where we collect property taxes into that pays for the bond, the street bond that I said is going to run out in 2019. This is where the property taxes come into and we make the bond payment from this. So that's collected by the assessors and sent to us and we take care of it. And with that, we've been through the whole thing. Again, I just want to go back and say that other than kind of the irregularity, I would call it, with the 911 budget, the way we were putting that together, it's okay. It's just that I want to again remind us all that the red flag that needs to be addressed, this coming year. So we got to figure out how to get that taken care of. And other than that, our budget should be good to go, and there's a little extra flexibility in there for this next year with contingencies for the council to look at if some of these things that we're trying to do with the technology, for example, or a police car opportunity comes along, you have some ability to address those as the year goes along. So.
The final budget figures here, Ray, on the end, does it figure in page 20 that it does the Head Start CDBG, but it's really kind of a wash is what it is?
Page 20. Yes. That is, yes, it's all of the remaining income. We've spent a little money on design and administration and things up to this point. But the remaining, at the 1st of July, at least I estimate there will be about $1,550,000 left in that fund. We're going to get the match from, the $20,000 match is already in our funds from Collins McDonald. We needed to have it here. It came to Head Start, but they gave it to us, so we got it. When you add up the bottom line, and then the $40,000 or $20,000 beginning fund let me back up. That's the money that's there from Collins McDonald. The other $20,000 local match is money that Head Start has still, but what didn't come from Collins McDonald. It's just fundraising they've had that they will put into the project. So at the end of the day, over this next year, we're going to spend about $1,590,000, which is what we have left to come in as well. So it'll be, now, that's assuming that we get the contractor. We're having a pre-bid meeting tomorrow afternoon. The bids are due a little later in May. Will be maybe, I think it's the second meeting in May that the council would potentially award a bid, and then we'll finish the contract. So we hope to be underway with construction down there by somewhere around the 1st of July, depending on how quickly a contractor can get here, get onto the project. Maybe it'll be a local contractor, it would be nice. It's a building that a local contractor probably could build. I'm not sure about bonding. We have a limitation on local contractors' ability to be bonded. So whether this is beyond their scope or not, I'm not sure. It'd sure be nice if we could not only get the money, but spend it locally.
You might be able to sell.
And so the project is supposed to be finished by May 17th, May 15th or May 17th of this 2017. There is a 6-month extension allowance on that date if in fact it wasn't finished, but I think the estimation at this point is that we'll have the outside work done weathered in, and they painted, the outside work finished by winter, and then the interior work can go on in December and January, February if necessary, hoping to close and be done with the project by maybe middle of March, early April, which would then allow us 45 days for the closeout process. You know, if that doesn't quite work, we still can move into that six-month extension period if we need to, but everybody's anxious to get it done and Head Start to go into there at the beginning of the fall of 2017.
That'd be great.
So it's a big project as far as Head Starts go. I was surprised when how expensive it is to build a roughly 7,000 or so square foot building.
It's a good budget, Ray. It's a little more breathing room than we had a few years ago.
We are, we're getting a little bit, and as I said, I think when I said we have 135,000 general fund, beginning fund balance, I'm being conservative on that. But I would rather be conservative than to be erring on the other side. So it gives you some breathing room, and it actually, you know, as you get further into the year and you know more precisely what the numbers are and there was something that came along, you can always do supplemental budgets, which means if you've got more income you didn't anticipate, you can do supplemental budgets, which means you bring you guys back together and say, hey, we've got $200,000 and this is something we need to do. You can go through this process specifically for that money and use it if you want to. I don't expect that to happen, but it's better to have that option to do that than it is to be looking at, you know, I was just looking at some stuff the other day when I came in 2006, the audit at the end of that year, the general fund was actually in the hole by $129,000, I think it was. And we've gone from there to, you know, I've said 135 in here, but you know, the number is probably closer to 200,000. So on the positive side, so that's a nice turnaround.
Yes, it is.
And we've still done all the things I think that we wanted to do. I mean,
And
maybe
more,
John, we would have liked to have had another police officer.
Programs.
You know, I don't, you know, one more police officer, actually 6 officers still won't get you 24/7,
And
365.
How about a dog catcher?
A dog, you know, there's one that, you know, actually I think, and I wasn't in on the county budget meetings this year, but my understanding is the county had some discussions about bringing back the animal control officer at the county and
It really
doing,
needs to be a county
and
thing.
doing, but
Well, whoever.
Yeah.
Well, before it was
county and town.
half town.
And, you know, if they work it right and make everybody pay fees, if they make me from Valley Falls that's got 3 dogs on the back of my pickup pay my dog license every year, which they don't, but if they would, if everybody that had a dog just paid their license fees, there would be enough money to run the program. There's probably more dogs in the county than there are people, so.
That's a fact,
You know,
right here in Lakeview.
And you know, we did have a joint program, and it worked fairly well, and for various reasons, budget reasons, primarily at the county at that time, it went away. And of course, the town couldn't operate one by itself. It was too expensive. So here we are today. I think there's $500 in the police budget for animal control. I mean, how much do you want for crying out loud? So anyway, there's the budget, and you guys, you know, we've got another meeting scheduled, but only because I schedule them in case we need them. If you don't think you need them, I guess before you leave today, the appropriate thing to do would be to make a motion to approve the budget with the changes that I've identified, unless there's others, as I went through it, and we'll make those changes, and that'll be ready for the council. So a motion to approve the budget with corrections would be appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we need a.
Thank you all.
Budget.
Thank you.
Is there a grand total for expenditure or revenue? I didn't see that anywhere in there.
I'll get that for you tomorrow.
It doesn't need to be done to the penny, but it'd be nice to have a rough range of revenue versus expenditure.
And I was working on that final number this afternoon, and I didn't get it done before we got down here, so but I will have that for you.
Cool.
You make that.
It's in the neighborhood of 13 million.
No, you just adjourn the meeting.